Right. So, what was this game series going to be about? Well, I'm going to tell you that. Now, keep in mind, I have not been working on this game series for about 7 years, so I might forget a tiny detail here and there, but overall, I do remember what the story was going to be. And I'm going to tell you the story in chronological order, not game release order, because that would just make this unnecessarily complicated. So, starting off, I am going to tell you which game that this would have occurred in, though. So, first off, Five Nights in the Land Before Time Origins, which was going to be the last game in the series. In 1988, following the release of the movie, a deal was struck for a restaurant location to be opened featuring animatronic versions of the characters from the movie. Why does my dog interrupt me in every single Five Nights at Freddy's video I ever make? I will be right back. Right, I am so sorry about that. It's only ever in Five Nights at Freddy's videos. Only. So as I was saying, in 1988, following the release of the film, a deal was struck to have a restaurant location be opened featuring animatronic characters based on the ones from the film The Land Before Time. Now, in this location, in this alternate universe, there was also going to be characters who didn't appear in the first film, but did in the sequels, such as Chomper and Ally. These characters didn't exist at the time of the original, and in this alternate universe, basically the reason they appeared in the sequels is because they appeared in this location. Now, during this place's time of operation, a night guard began working, and he began to see things. Throughout the game series, a shadowy Velociraptor character named Blackout was going to appear in basically every game, and he represents malicious energy and he represented the loss of sanity. So, as the nights get more hectic, you would begin to see him more and more. And he would kind of act like the Phantoms, where if he jump scared you, he wouldn't kill you, but he would make you flip out for a few seconds and waste time until you recover. Eventually, after working the night shift for a week, this night guard lost his sanity, and the next day, he killed one of the chefs at the restaurant. This chef became the Forgotten. His spirit possessed a puppet that was in the location, because it's Five Nights at Freddy's, there has to be a puppet, and he became the Forgotten. This character was going to appear in every single game, but he would never attack you. He was only ever going to watch you. The killer, meanwhile, vanished into thin air, and no one was ever able to find him. Jump forward in time, there was another location opened in 1990. However, it also closed after a series of murders occurred there. And I just say 1990, I don't remember the exact year. It was in the early 90s before FNAF. I'm just using 90 as a placeholder. Again, it's been 7 years since I thought about the lore for this game. I'm surprised I remember it. Anyway, the killer killed a group of kids at a birthday party in this location, and it was another pizzeria featuring the Land Before Time characters. It had finally reopened after the incident 2 years previously. One of the kids, his name was Tom, and it was his birthday that him and his friends were murdered at. And he went on to possess the animatronic version of Spike. If you've seen the movies, you know who that is. He's the Stegosaurus character, the green Stegosaurus, if you haven't seen the movies. You can look it up easy enough. So, the spirits then possessed all of the animatronics, and the place once again closed. Now, in this universe, Fazbear Entertainment exists, and this first game is what we're about to get to. The first game was actually going to be set a year after Five Nights at Freddy's 1, and it was going to be set in the FNAF 1 pizzeria, which had been bought out by this other company after it closed at the end of the year, as the first FNAF game said it would. After it closed, it was remodeled into a new version of the pizzeria that had so far closed twice due to 2 series of murders, and business also was not going very well, and they would not be able to stay open for very long either. The first game was going to follow you working as a night guard in this location, with the haunted robots coming after you. The character, the Forgotten, was going to be present, but you would never actually see him physically in this game. He was going to be hiding in the shadows all the time. and blackout was going to appear on night 6 as your own sanity began to go away due to all the paranormal stuff. So following the closure of that pizzeria, the characters were then taken to a junkyard, where they sat until 2014, when the second game was going to take place. In this junkyard, they would come alive every night, just as they always did, and a new night guard was going to realize this. The first 4 nights of the game were going to be set in the office. However, on night 5, you were going to move to a different location of your choosing. Kind of think how Five Nights at Wario's 3 did it. Only this was going to be once. And you would have 2 options. You could either spend night 5 in the old radio broadcaster room, because before this building was bought out and used as the head office for a junkyard, it was a radio broadcasting station, or a supply closet, and each version would have its own unique mechanics. So following this, on night 6, you would be back in the office. Only this time it wouldn't just be the animatronics coming after you. The killer was back, and you were actually going to have him coming after you. And I had ideas for how this was going to work, because he was going to have to not be killed by the very angry ghosts who are angry at him specifically. And I'll be honest, I don't quite remember the idea I had, but I did have an idea to where it would work. And this was also he was actually going to call you and tell that he was coming for you. And so yeah, and in this game there were going to be no doors, and you would have to hide under the desk, hide in a locker behind your desk, and other ways like that. And I think there was going to be something kind of like a music box also to keep you from being able to just hide all night, or only certain characters would be fooled by hiding in certain places. I don't quite remember. Again, it's been 7 years. So anyway, after this all went down, the police, of course, got involved, and due to the legal, I'm so sorry. Due to the legal ramifications and aftermath, the characters were taken out of there and dumped in a warehouse district. And this is where the next game was going to be set 3 years later in 2017, if I remember correctly. I believe it's 2017. The characters were going to be at this warehouse district, and it was once again going to be a night guard realizing that they're haunted. And this game, I was really playing around with different ways you could use a flashlight. Not only would you have to kind of do a FNAF 2 to see on the cameras with it, you also weren't going to have any door or vent lights, and you would have to use it on those as well to see if anyone was at the doors. This place was also going to have 2 floors. You were going to be in the upstairs room, and most of the areas where they wander around was going to be downstairs, but they would steadily make their way up to you. And they would either come at you through a door on your left or right, or a vent on your left and right. Anyway, mechanics don't really matter because these games are never going to see the light of day. What I'm trying to tell you is the story. Once again, and this is where my memory gets a little flaky for exactly what happened, but for whatever reason, I believe the night guard actually gets killed at the end of this game. I believe this is what it was. He gets killed, and the characters are once again shift hands, and they're dumped in another warehouse owned by a private individual, and that's where they sit for 50 years. They sit there for 50 years, gathering dust, rusting, and falling apart. Only now it was time for my game series, FNAF 3 equivalent. At this point, 50 years later, the horrors and the story that these robots have with them have become almost an urban legend, and no one knows where the robots ended up. Well, some people happen to find them, long deactivated and drained of any power in this storage facility. And they take them, and they dump them in a historical-based horror attraction based on the horrors of the past. I was really going to do a FNAF 3 homage with this game, because this game also was going to be when the killer resurfaced, only now he has since passed away, and he, in his restless spirit, has possessed a new animatronic that the horror attraction has created, and he was going to be like a rotting corpse, a mutilated corpse animatronic. And I never really came up with a reason for why this character looks the way he does. Kind of think the zombie or the mummy or whatever it is from Dungeon Nightmares kind of what I was thinking the appearance would be. Only, thinking about it now, I suppose something I probably would have done would have been, this is what one of the corpses looked like after the murder, or after they were stuffed in the suits, or this is what the security guard looked like. You know, something like that is probably the reason I would have gone with. But I didn't ever think that far ahead with these games. I had a story in mind, and I knew what what each general game chapter, would cover. And at this point, this is the fourth game. So we've had the first game set in the FNAF 1 location. We've had the second in the junkyard, the third in the warehouse, and this one is set in a horror attraction 50 years after the third game. And now, this game, what I wanted to do was just overwhelm the player with red herrings, and a lot of, specifically red herring mechanics, where you would have a lot of tools at your disposal, but it would be up to you to figure out which ones actually would do anything to stop the animatronics. And whenever the killer becomes active, probably around night 4, you have to sacrifice the easy ways to stop the other characters just to stop him, meaning that you have to do the more complicated ones to keep the other ones away from you. And it was basically a mad dash. It was going to be a mad dash type game. And each night, more characters were powered back up, so more characters would start coming after you. On night 1, it was just going to be one. I don't remember who it was going to be specifically. I think, yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember who it was going to be specifically. But throughout this game, something was going to happen. And I hadn't come up for a reason why. Maybe, looking back, it could be the spirits finally decided to just let go of their anger. But every night after the game, there was going to be this series equivalent to a happiest day. And it was you were going to have one of the characters show up in a minigame format. And above, at the top of the screen, there was going to be letters. And there were going to be an ABC order. And if you clicked on it, it would spawn the corresponding character. So say A, Allie, C, Sarah, etc. Or if there's multiple with the same letter, click it twice, and then it would go like from Sarah to Chomper, okay? So, the ghosts who have been haunting the Land Before Time inspired animatronics for all these years, if you did it right, and this, you had to do it in ABC order, make them go to the end of the minigame, they would all gather up, and if you did it in ABC order, they would have a talk with each other. And they would let go. And they would leave the suits and go beyond. The exception of one. They were going to point out they were missing one. Tom. Tom was not going to join them. He was going to take out the killer. And that was where the game was going to end. The next game was going to be back at a warehouse. Only this time it was going to be a two animatronics only, 2v1. It was going to be Tom and the animatronic who the killer has possessed. And in between each night in this game, there was going to be mini games. And it would be something very simple, like turn off this button here, or move this item here, or whatever. At the end of night 5, it was going to be the boss fight minigame. And what you had to do, the killer animatronic was going to be chasing you as Tom around, and Tom would have been Spike as an 8-bit sprite, And what you had to do was you were going to have to do the little things you did on each nightly minigame in the order you did them originally. If you did it out of order, it was kind of a red herring that you taught how to do it, but if you don't do it in the right order, you would fail. If you do it in the right order, i.e. the order you were taught to do them in, the killer would shut down. His animatronic would shut down, and his soul would be forever trapped there. Now, if he touched you, or you did it out of order, that fate would happen to you. But if you did it in the right order, the killer would shut down, and his spirit would forever be trapped in that suit, and Tom would fade away. And then at the end of night 6, it would show Tom joining his friends, who he was murdered alongside so many decades earlier, and he would join them. And that was going to be the end. The killer is trapped forever in an animatronic, and that was going to be it. That was gonna be it. I had ideas for what I could do with like spin-off stories or anything that don't affect the main plot, but that was basically what Five Nights in the Land Before Time was gonna be. And then after that game would have been Origins, where you see everything. And of course, you're thinking, what about the Forgotten? Exactly, he's forgotten. He also is forever trapped. And I was entertaining the idea back then of doing a spin-off game which would resolve his storyline, but it never really got beyond just an idea phase. Most of this series never got out of an idea phase. I only ever got the first game into a very rough idea state that if you've seen the trailer for it, you know what I'm talking about. And I realized around that time that I don't really have the skills to make this happen. So I'm just going to quietly cancel it, and that's where it's been since September 2015, I think. September 2016. September 2016. That's where it's been since then. I canceled it, I think, in July 2016, and I was hoping for the game to come out in September 2016, which was why I decided to cancel it. I realized I just I don't have the skills to make this happen. But anyway, I'm definitely forgetting some stuff, but that is because again, I thought of this 7 years ago, and I haven't actively done anything with it for what 6 years now. So yeah, I don't. I guarantee I'm forgetting some stuff. And like I said, there were ideas I had for like side stories that would be their own thing, but yeah. So the first game, I'll kind of give you the rundown of how it was gonna play. It was gonna play like FNAF 1. And if you've seen my characters video I did for this, you'll know which characters we're gonna need. But basically, um, you were gonna have the main five from the original movie. So Littlefoot, Sarah, Ducky, Petrie, Spike. You were gonna have Chomper and Ruby and Allie. I think that was it. I think it was just gonna be the 8 characters, and there was gonna be like a Velociraptor animatronic, and I think that was it. 9 characters who could kill you. There were going to be other Blackout, obviously, and then there was going to be some other hallucination characters who kind of were like phantoms, who could only jump scare you, not actually kill you. And they were only going to show up after Blackout had kind of already showed up. So but basically, it was going to play like FNAF 1. On night 1, you're going to only have 1 or 2 characters active. Same deal with night 2. Night 3 is when things were really going to start getting difficult, and it would just keep upping the ante. If I remember right, Ruby was going to be the Foxy on the left side, and then the other Velociraptor animatronic, who was going to be in a closet on the left, which I know didn't exist in FNAF 1, or a closet on the right, excuse me, which I know didn't exist in FNAF 1, but it was going to remodel the place. They added a few new rooms. There was also going to be a party room, like in that empty space above the office, in between the left and right hallways. There was going to be a party room there, and yeah, and he was going to come at you from his closet. If you've seen the FNAF Plus map, think where the power room is, but just move it to the bottom, the very bottom most corner, kind of like where Chica and Freddy are in the original game when they're staring at the camera in the right hallway. That's where it was going to be. And this dude was a Foxy, meaning if you saw the closet door was open, you had a second at most to shut the door before he jumped in there and killed you. But anyway, I remember the first game how it was going to play the most out of all of them. But yeah. And then there was also another character. It was a teddy bear, and his name was Teddy. I know, creative, right? And if I remember right, this was a haunted character who was someone else who was killed, and then they possessed a teddy bear that was like left at the restaurant. I don't quite remember how he was going to work, but in all honesty, he probably would have been cut from the game anyway. But there was also a random teddy bear character who would kind of be that game's balloon boy, where if he got in the office, he would either disable the lights or the doors. And then there was another character who, if they got in the office, I think it may have been Ducky, who was going to disable either the lights or the doors. They were basically going to be the balloon boy JJ of that game, where one would disable the lights, one would disable the doors, and they would never leave the office. And this has been very nostalgic, kind of looking back at this game series I once wanted to make. Anyway, though, that's the general story of Five Nights in the Land Before Time. And like I said, I guarantee I forgot a few things here and there, but generally that's what happened. That's the main gist. And thinking on it, how different would things have been if this game series had seen the light of day? I don't know. But I was passionate for it back then. I really wanted to make it happen. I just realized I don't have the skill set to make a game, and honestly, I wouldn't be against learning and actually making a FNAF fan game at some point in the future. There was that one I was talking about in my just recently done revisit of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, which probably wouldn't be too difficult to make. If I ever make a FNAF fan game, if I ever learn how, I'll make that happen. But yeah, it's just I've moved on from this. Like, if I did ever learn how to make a FNAF fan game, maybe I would make the first one, but I would definitely not make this 8-part series that I had originally envisioned. Gosh, and back then, I didn't really think about what it meant to be 8 games in scope. That's a lot. That is a lot. That's honestly, like the third game, that could be cut. Like, there are games that could be cut. Back then though, I didn't think of how big that scope really was. And I even was entertaining the idea of throwing a FNAF 4 style game into the mix where it's haunted, nightmarish versions of them, but I never could really think of how that would fit into the rest of the lore. But one reason I wanted to make that game was because I could set it in, like, I was actually going to set that one in my grandparents' trailer because when I was really young, me and my cousins, we would always go over there and watch like just movies together. And The Land Before Time back then, because we were all really young, was a very frequent pick. So it would have that game would have been a spin-off like I was talking about. But yeah, the point is, it's never going to happen. I've moved on from this, but I I decided I should maybe at least say what the story was going to be before I do forget what it was going to be. And yeah, and I'm definitely in a different place now than I was back then. My passion is for writing. I've been working on books, and yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now, and I'm happy to be there. This Five Nights in the Land Before Time, I'm happy that it existed for what it was, but it's definitely something that I've moved on from. But I can appreciate because it did kind of, in a way, it did help me channel my creativity. And, I don't, that's something I've always loved is just thinking of creative ideas and telling creative stories. And this one obviously would have been heavily FNAF inspired, but yeah, I'm, I'm happy that this existed as an idea. Um, but I've definitely moved on from it and matured from it. And so I think this is probably a relic best left in the past. But I did want to tell the story, or at least what I remembered of the story. And I remember a couple other things, but they're just minor, like ideas for mechanics and various games and stuff. Like in the third game, no doors, you were gonna have a mask or something, and I remember because Chomper was always my favorite from The Land Before Time. He was gonna have like a specific kind of thing in each game, just because he was always my favorite character from that series. I don't remember what though. He was always gonna kind of do his own thing though. Definitely a little bit biased there. I remember in the third game, though, his withered appearance was going to be inspired by Withered Chica, where his jaw would be, like, broken and separated from the rest of his head, and it was just going to hang open, and you would see all the teeth inside of it. He was going to have a Withered Chica type look, and I remember in that game he was also going to have an arm missing. I do generally remember how each character was going to look in each game, but yeah. Again, it's best left as a relic of the past. But it was kind of fun to think about what the series could have been, and kind of think about the story, at least what I remember of it, that I had in mind. And I'm not really going to dive into what any of the spin-offs were going to be, because there was going to be like 2 or 3 ideas I had for side stories that could be set in the same universe, like at other branches of the same type restaurant. But yeah. So anyway, that's the general story of Five Nights in the Land Before Time. It was gonna be, the main series was gonna be 8 games long. Gosh, I'd probably still be making that if I had decided to actually make this series a reality. Goodness gracious. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'm happy that this idea existed, but I've definitely moved on from it. But I'm still very, as much as I ever was, a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I cannot wait to see what fan games come out in the future, because the FNAF community has a lot of very creative people in it, and I can't wait to see where the actual game series goes in the future. So yeah, this was fun. I enjoyed doing this. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. If you're curious in some of the other content I do a lot of FNAF gameplay videos. I do camping vlog type videos a lot, which used to document entire trips. Anymore, it's just the funny rage that comes from when I watch people play cornhole, because cornhole apparently can just make people very angry, and YouTube loves that stuff. And I also do audio narrations based on my books, even though I am recording this before I make the next one. I'm gonna upload it first. I just uploaded a 6th one, and maybe a 7th, depending on when I do this. So check those out, and that's my new story. If you want to get an idea of what story I'm cooking up now, check out those narrations from my books. They're from rough drafts, but it'll be the same general thing whenever the final drafts do release. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Goodness gracious, I've been talking for almost 30 minutes, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I'll see you in the next video.